Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us. May our study be filled with enthusiasm and be fruitful. May our work we work together with the same kind of enthusiasm and vigor. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this is the Vedanta series, question and answer. There are no questions, there are no answers. So I'll wait to see what questions may arise from the ether. All right, so let's remind ourselves of some of the fundamental principles in Vedanta. Incorrectly, many people assume that the Vedanta is to do with non-dualism. And non-duality is something very special. So most people, 90% plus, if they are religious of any kind, including those in India, will be about 90% plus will be dualists. But that is no reason to say that we cannot apply non-dualism in a practical way when the context is right. So all philosophical positions and doctrines are useful, actually, because we can shift our viewpoint. There's no point in dealing with a difficulty that we have if, in dealing with it, our problem is not being solved. For example, the dualistic approach would be to request, Lord, please give me something. Give me this, give me that. It may even be something along the traditional prayer lines that commence, may all beings be peaceful, and so on. That's also good. But ritualistic prayers, the danger of dualistic worship is that we can get caught up in results. I haven't got something, I want something. So just to repeat some of the concepts I mentioned to do with prayer, sometimes when prayer is not effective, it's because we don't realize that prayer is a mental movement primarily. It can be expressed also, endorsed and underlined by actions. And actions includes ritualistic worship. If we only stick to the ritualistic worship with an intention in mind, may I get this A, B, and C, then the difficulty is I'm also endorsing the fact that I haven't got it. But supposing I make the request with utter confidence, still I'll only get the result that is intrinsically held in the intention. May I benefit. And that will not be an ultimate solution to any problem. It'll simply put you back into the same situation eventually. So while it may be a way of overcoming some temporary difficulty, if ultimately the repetitive nature of it is not solving any problem, we have to learn to shift our position. And the whole range of philosophical doctrines enable us to do this. We don't necessarily have to take the dualistic position. We can learn to shift our position. For example, if somebody says that atoms are basically radiation, we can take the simple hydrogen atom and we can disassemble it in some way or other, then we'll find radiation. And radiation is a kind of amorphous thing present everywhere within a certain range. But is the universe like that? We are full of atoms. Are we basic radiation? Yes, we can say that. When we deconstruct the atomic structure, that's what we find. But that doesn't really help us when we want to make a table. So when we deal with the waking state, we have to think and deal with the waking state in a waking manner, practical manner. But that doesn't mean to say we should not forget the intrinsic value of all the other philosophical positions. So that when life impinges on us, pinches us a little bit, and we find no way out, then we can shift our position from a waking world. Supposing we shift our position to something like the bundle of forces that emanate from a cosmic mind, supposing that's our position, then we may well give ourselves a place in an afterlife. We can make our condition better so that a meditative person is not necessarily heading for ultimate freedom. Ravana was a meditating man. He had great concentration, but that did not give him any salvation. It didn't put him out of his difficulties or problems. In fact, it put him more into it. And so the final goal, if we are to put it in the Vedanta as moksha or freedom, will not be achieved if you're still thinking in limited ways. So we have to acknowledge that there are laws of the waking world, and there are also laws of other regions also. And we have to learn to deal with these in appropriate ways. So the non-dualistic position also uses a causal connection. It uses it for some areas of argument, that something has been created, but at the last moment, we can pull the rug of dualism away. At the very last moment, that'll be our final solution. So I own this body, which is old, relatively speaking. I own this mind, which has got some good tendencies, some bad tendencies, some memories, some accumulated experiences. But I, the person who's connected with this body-mind thing, can be interpreted, felt, and verified to be the non-dual ultimate principle as well. And if I continuously tune into that position, what will be the practical benefit for me? So in some contexts, it'll be easy to verify it. And in many contexts, it may not be necessary to verify it. But at least we have that as a standby ultimate tool. And when we have that, it becomes a pleasure then to face the world. That's the practical nature of it. Having the ultimate tool in one hand, and you can take temporary tools from anywhere for daily life, that's a game. So whatever thing comes up, if we have the ability, or if we use the ability that we already have to shift our position and see that is a game that we can play and it's worthwhile playing. It may not look like that. I can find a way of usefully dealing with it. What I normally give is, if you want to approach a horse, then don't charge toward it. It'll either run away or it'll run toward you. Same thing with a dog. Don't look at a dog in the eyes and challenge it. And baboons have the cleverness to attack you in a group. One on one, they're not so good. Now you can sit amongst them and look in the distance. And the baboon will also look in the distance, but keep half an eye on you. But if you suddenly turn around, it'll make a reaction. It'll be prepared to run, to seek refuge up a tree. And then if it shouts, it'll alarm all the other baboons. And they have a mutual arrangement to work as a tribe and see what is the problem area. And they can strategically surround you. And they have very sharp teeth. Now, if you then turn around and look the baboon in the eye, he'll be seen as an aggressive movement on your part. So if you want to take any problem, so-called challenge and so on, attack it from the side. Approach it with a sense of humor, if you can, and looking in the distance, extend your hand so that the animal will smell it a little bit, get used to it, lick it, And then you can arrange your hand behind the ear and see what the reaction is, still not looking. And then it'll voluntarily approach you. It'll start licking you, exploring you. Same thing with life, same thing with institutions. So the psychology of it is repression. Whatever comes up in the mind, don't repress it. Take it as an energetic value, something like a wave, and see where you can steer it in a more useful and positive direction. That means that every event that comes into your field of experience is an opportunity, direction of energy in a higher, more useful way, if you take it like that. If you don't take it like that, then your very psychology, your very way of thinking will drag you down. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita it tells us, you raise yourself up by yourself, lower yourself by yourself. You're your own best friend, your own worst enemy. You think the other person is your enemy. No, it's you yourself. So taking advantage of this, what will be the repercussions? The repercussions will be that any thought or series of thought that you put in confidently with a sense of joy, sense of euphoria even, will arrange all the atomic structures that we call the material universe in your favor. It will correspond to exactly the way you're thinking. So there can be a way of collectively doing it or individually doing it. And you can imagine it is something like a broadcasting station where every individual radio or individual transistor is tuning in. So the non-dual system, it doesn't contradict duality. That would be a mistake. And in fact, the non-dualistic system of view, because it is non-dualistic, makes us completely fearless. In the face of all kinds of fearful things, when we see things in a dualistic way, all that goes off because only one is standing there. And if there's more than one, you can be fearful, doubtful, you can be tempted. All of those reactions can take place. But when you see things in the correct way, then you can deal with things almost by remote control. Take it something like a game of tennis. So the non-dualistic view makes us fearless. That's the one advantage of it. It makes us cheerful. Even in the face of the greatest difficulties, it's a tool which can be, as I say, useful. So it's worth studying it, at least. And if you can read the books written by other people who ridicule this, they don't understand this point of view. If the ultimate principle is only one, you call it God of religion, and you are that, and everybody is that. And if that's true, they may argue, then why is it that when a Jesus or Moses got freedom, why didn't you also get it? That's their argument. When everybody is stupid, then there'll be no intelligent people. When everybody is realized and free, everybody will be free. That would be their argument against it. But evidently, you and I are separate. So their attainment of liberation or attainment of God's grace did not necessarily free them or free us. So we have to struggle independently. That would be their view. That would be the dualistic mantra being used. And then there's no necessity for you and me to act on the basis that we are separate from the ultimate reality or from those people who attain some level of sainthood, even in the olden days. So for all practical purposes, then you and I are separate. We acknowledge that in the waking state. We can be separate from one another, but not separate from the ultimate principle. That's the thing. That's the thing that is missing in their point of view. The ultimate principle, when we find it, is the same everywhere. So there's no need to become. You don't have to become anything. There's no becoming. When you understand this, the sense of achievement goes away. You may think that's a bad thing, but that only creates stress for you. I want to be in a certain position. I have to struggle all my life to get it. When I don't get it, I get disappointed. So we have to understand the ultimate principle is already there. Kingdom of heaven is within you. You don't have to go and look for it. There's no absentee God. So because we can play this game of life, we can play it very well. And if it's a game, then it's better to have many, not one alone. What use is a game if it's just by yourself with yourself? So the use of having some idea of separateness in the context of a game becomes then some area of enjoyment. You are separate from me, I'm separate from you, we are separate from the ultimate reality, separate from the inner self. The knowing principle inside me is the subject. So naturally, the things known, the body, mind, emotions, are all in the field. What do we mean by the field? The 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita says something extraordinarily interesting and very practical. Right from the very start, tells us that there is a field. What is the field consisting of? It says, idam shariram kunteya kshetram iti abhediyate. The Lord said, this body is called the field. And that which is conscious is also called the knower of the field by those who have knowledge thereof. You do this by an analytical process. Understanding that your world of experience is multifarious, multidimensional, many things happening there, many people, events coming through. It's a kind of shopping mall that you can observe. Some of it impacting, some of it not. But at least as an observer. If you ask, what is that observer? You're looking for a unit that experiences it. Let's call it the eyeball. But we know that the eyeball, when you go to the Specsavers and get spectacles, you see that the eyeball can be very tired one moment, particularly in the face of computer work that now we all have to do these days. And then you put some drops in, it can be refreshed. You can see that. You can feel a little lazy one day, a little lacking in energy. And then you can see, oh, having taken food, an energetic boost can happen. And of course, if you don't take tea, there's no chance at all. So there's a field inside, in front, and something that knows, something that is aware of this field. And when somebody says, at the end of the day, there is absolutely nothing, there is an absence of anything, there's simply a void, then the next question is, all right, who knows it? So something has to be there. Supposing you take a philosophical position that says, no, when you empty everything, nothing's there. Why do you assert that something can be there or is there? A nihilist position. They give me an example. Well, if you empty the whole ocean, then nothing's there. No, sand is there. Something is always there. So who knows it? What is that fundamental principle that is always witnessing? That is a knower, not just a witness, but a knower. And we may say also an inexhaustible current of thought, a thinker. There's something in me that does that, that knows it. So behind this, there's a knower, we can call that maybe, that registering office that takes in all information, sorts it out, brings associated memories up to the waking conscious level, and then creates some kind of reaction. Collectively, you can call it the mind. The mind is observing all these fields in front. Physical field. Physical field, when we observe from this point of view, is a multiplicity of parts, maybe 30 trillion cells going on, all operating. We're not normally aware of it, but we are aware of its collective parts. My hand, my arm, my this, my that. What is it that knows that? And then we can see what vagaries there are in this mental field. We can see it's also a field of multiplicity, many things going on, things changing from day to day. We can observe a wave coming up, and the characteristic of a wave is it has a beginning, it has a certain movement in time and space, it has a certain peak, and it disappears. Like that, we can observe all these activities, wave-like activities going through in the mental field. Who knows it? Some knower is there. All these fields, collectively now called body and mind also, they are all observed. And then the discerning factor there called the intellect is also being observed. What I decide, what I think today, I change my mind tomorrow. Ultimately, there's some knower. What is that? Then this astonishing statement. Kshetrajnam cha pimam viti sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetra kshetrajnayo jnanam yat tajnanam matam mama. Know me to be the knower in all the fields, not just this one field, all the fields. Only one observer being there. Knowledge in the field and the knower of the field is true knowledge. So when you talk about Vedanta and say, what does it mean? And when people ask, this word Vedanta, I never came across it. Even Hindus ask me this question, what is Vedanta? Not knowing that Vedanta is the philosophy of so-called Hinduism, and Hinduism itself can be replaced by the term Vedanta or Vedika or Sanatana Dharma. That's okay, that's the practical portion of it. So where does it come from? Then I break it down. So vid, to know, to see. The one that sees. Where is this, all this coming from? These are rishis, seers, anta, the end of it, the finality, the essence, the fundamental quintessence of all knowledge. That's called Vedanta in all its ranges. And it's a non-contradictory position. It says, yes, we acknowledge these fields of multiplicity. We don't deny it. And when there is an observer and something that is observed, two things necessary are there. For any experience, two things have to be there. The thing that is perceived and the perceiver. We can't have one without the other. So when we say witness, when we say knower, we are acknowledging this dualistic aspect of it. Two factors have to be there. And these factors could be, as I say, something physical like the body, or mental like ideas or emotions or feelings which come and go. These constitute what is technically called the field. The knower of the field is separate from it. It persists. It persists as the unchanging witness of all the changes going on in front. Whether they're external or whether internal, it makes no difference. And of the body and the mental scenes, one observer is there. And the coordinating center can be, in a sense, some self-identity called ego. But the ego too is an object of perception. It feels happy one moment, it feels miserable the next, it feels elated, it feels depressed. It goes through a whole range of identifications. And so, when reactions are controlled on scriptural lines, that is, lines that are the direct perceptions, direct revelations from people who have gone through this practical process of clearing things up, clarifying things, what we call purity of mind. When we understand things in the clear light, where no confusions are there. Clearly, all of you are in that state because no questions arose. When that happens on scriptural lines and the witnessing consciousness judges the progress made, even when evolution from darkness to light has been achieved, so to speak, then there's a feeling of satisfaction wells up, and the knower observes that also. It also forms part of the field. And so on one occasion, we mentioned the Kathopanishad about the dissimilarity of the senses arising and setting. In mentioning this particular idea that they seem to be arising separately. And so on one side, they evolve, some things evolve, primordial essences of that, the subtle elements of that. They all combine, they rise and they set, and arise as sense organs and sense objects ultimately. So on one side, they evolve into all sounds. On the other, into all types of ears. So it goes on. And these are the tanmatras I constantly mention about their significance and importance. And then these arise also, the senses also, not done when the waking state goes, because a dream adventure also comes. And then all the sense organs play their part in that. Both the dream and the waking state give place to a peaceful, homogeneous state of consciousness that we call simply sleep. And we call this maybe even our deep sleep, because there's no duality that arises at all. Still there's something that registers it. Something remains awake. And we usually ignore this deep sleep state and don't try to find out what significance there may be in this freely given daily lesson. The Kathopanishad, if we're mentioning that, it touches that topic. It wants us to realize this Mahat, this great, all-pervading self, through which we perceive all the objects. And these objects are presented not only in the waking state, but also in the dream state. And by knowing it, there'll be no more occasion for grief. And I mentioned that and labeled the point as na shochati. All grief is gone. But grief is what we're suffering from. What is grief? See, the beautiful term, because all our deepest sadnesses are because of an absence of something. So when there's a bereavement, it means we have lost somebody. See, that's the expression. Whereas so-and-so, oh, we lost him last year. As if he's in the lost and found property. So that's the expression we have. Then in personal relationships, somebody gets divorced. Oh, there's a sadness. There's a sense of absence of something. Then when we want something and we can't get it, on a different scale perhaps, but we also feel dissatisfied. So pretty much all our psychological pain is due to this thwarted desire. And it can be extremely subtle. I desire that people think I am worthwhile. We can classify that as a kind of egoistic position that gives us a difficulty, because all of this pain comes from this badly registered identity between myself and the field, the knower and the field. When these get tangled up, this creates pain for us. And further details, of course, about these three states are given us comprehensively in various other Upanishads. course, the entire Mandukya Upanishad is dedicated to the subject, but also it's relevant to sections of the Prajna Upanishad that we have previously studied on Tuesdays. It's mentioned in the Chandogya Upanishad, Vritaranyaka Upanishad, and of course in the Katha Upanishad itself, that the full glory of the individual self is indicated by one interesting expression, the Lord of the past and the future, the Lord of time, in other words. Some governing entity over time, expressing itself as time, a registration to us of perception of change. Lord is time itself. And we can register it appearing now. And I repeat the example as a blank check, never been used before. Here's a second. Put something useful. Play a game like that. So when the mind is fairly pure, we can stand back, as it were. We can internally discern that we are basically consciousness itself. And when we are consciousness, we can see that we could be equipped with two useful instruments, physical body and a subtle version of it, the mind. The body has certain limits, subject to termination in time. And the mind also has recognized boundaries as well. It can cause us pain or pleasure when it's left uncontrolled. And so the ordinary 90%, the ordinary person who finds that this body-mind complex is a source of bondage and who struggles to make himself free, even though his struggle may be misdirected. But soon there'll be a realization we have to practice some kind of direction, some discipline has to be there. And when this leads to a purity of mind, then the Lord himself will reveal the truth. We don't have to ask anything further. And we get a blessing from that. And then we realize something extraordinary, that everywhere are his hands and eyes and ears and heads and everything. And the scripture itself will tell us that. So Bhagavad Gita itself will tell us this also. So he is there, he exists in all the worlds, and we've been studying the Isha Upanishad, enveloping all. The opening statement of the Isha Upanishad tells us straight away that he is the Lord and envelops everything, penetrates everywhere. What a beautiful statement, to the extent that Mahatma Gandhi said, if everything gets burnt to the ground, all the text, all the scriptures, and that alone remains, then we have everything, actually. We can pick it up from there. So he shines through the functioning of all the senses, but is without senses. He's inside as well as outside. You get some idea of that when we look at a pot and see where's the air, is it inside, is it outside? No, inside and outside, both are there, immanent and transcendent. That we have to get used to it. And he's on all creatures. He abides as if divided. So that what we look out as the world, another shifted position will tell us that what we see, what we experience, is only apparently divided God. We're looking through a kaleidoscope of a mind that fragments everything. If we take the mind away, if we learn to refine it so that the mind itself, this divisive element of the mind, is gone, then what we see is only that oneness, where the object and subject are identified and experienced only as a oneness. Then all that grief is gone. This is the practical dimension of this non-dualistic position. That entity has been described as, in all religions, the light of lights, the knowledge, knowable, goal of knowledge, all in one, seated in the hearts of all. All this comes into the 13th chapter of this Bhagavad Gita. So then what is the process? Apart from what we have mentioned, how can we realize this entity by diligently cultivating all the noble qualities we can. And these come under the heading of sattva, purity of mind. There are many ways to do this. Let us look at some of the most convenient ways. Lovingly repeating God's name over and over again incessantly. No time, no space, no special condition is required for it. We can do it anytime, anywhere. Even now we can be doing it. So that when my guru, Swami Purnananda, was asked, how many times should we repeat our mantra? He says, 24 hours of the day. Never stop. It's something that we can incessantly use. And even in the midst of all our activities, it can be there working in the background. This unheard repetition can be there. But of course, we have to attach love to it. We have to attach feeling to it. We have to have a yearning. We have to make sure that we don't postpone it and say, just now, let me deal with this first. We put it there and allow it to work. So in other words, we can take long lists of virtues that are put out in the various scriptures. And they are called knowledge since they are helpful for our knowledge. But the impurity of the mind really consists in identification with the senses, what we generally call egoism. That is why we start our process here in Ireland with a personality development course. We start off with the Enneagram and Essence of Truth, because these particular identifications are not standard. Each one has their own individual shaped personality. Because of its individuality, it can be useful to us when it comes under our control. Something like a mask. And so when we operate from behind this mask, two things happen. The knower is asserted. And the known, that is the mask, is identified, not abandoned, but made as a useful thing. And the whole thing becomes something like Shakespeare's All the World's a Stage, and we are but players. Playing with all the waves, frolicking amongst the summer waves of the ocean. Identifying for what they are, not fearing that we will drown. For we are the ocean. I am the ocean that has to be asserted. And as we practice this impurity becomes removed, the more we engender this purity of mind, of thought, of actions. And it decreases until finally it vanishes through ultimately non-demanding love for God is the best way, the most convenient way, the sweetest way. That entity has been acknowledged not as an extra cosmic entity, but something that is a supreme soul in the body, remaining as its supporter, also as its enjoyer, but just as a spectator, because what is the enjoyer? The enjoyer is the witness. If I want to enjoy a play somewhere, there's a lot of stress in me learning lines and worrying, will the audience appreciate my performance, etc., etc. A much better place is sit in the audience and enjoy the performance as a witness. So when we say witness, we are really also saying enjoyer. Now there's no sackcloth and ashes in all of this. There's no negativity in all of this. So he is seemingly the enjoyer, but in fact, he's the mere spectator or the witness. So viewing this entity in these different ways, we can achieve our mental purity, but it requires us to use our capacity to shift our ideas. And the Vedanta philosophy allows us to do this. So when the eye of knowledge is fully opened, and the knower will see that nature has no binding power at all over you, over me, over anything. So this is the great value of this small but wonderful and profound statement, Kshetrajna chapi mam vidhi. Know me to be the knower in all the fields. And then knowledge and the field and the knower of the field. That is the supreme knowledge that we should have. That is the Vedanta philosophy. Not denying the field, not denying the process, and definitely not denying the subjective knower. So what is that field? Ultimately, that field is made from 5 elements. And I tirelessly put them up on the board here as all these elements, starting off from, in this framework, from nature itself as an umbrella, potentiality containing 3 evolutionary forces. And as one unfolds and produces a cosmic mind, as that mind wills and thinks, then all the other glories emanate from it, starting from Akasha, then going to Ayu, then Agni, going through to Api, Prithivi, etc. And all of these ultimately producing a concretized view. But we have to know that it is only the very crest of a wave that we are viewing. It is not the be all and end all. That much we have to understand. Now, cosmology helps us to understand it a little bit, because if we are to go to the outer edge of our own solar system, we would not even be able to see the dot that we call the Earth. So very Voyager vessels have made that journey and then go through a very turbulent outer edge of the solar system, going beyond the range. In times past, we used to think the solar system is all there is. Then we thought, oh, there's a Milky Way galaxy, that's all that there is. Now modern technology has enabled to see that there are billions and billions and billions of these whirling galaxies, so many light years across. And we don't know how old the universe is. Current cosmology says 13.78 billion years, but when you see how they arrived at this number, you'll be astonished, because it takes many unrealistic factors into effect. And furthermore, we know that there are older parts of the universe, older than this 13.8 billion years. That puts us in a bit of a difficulty. So we can simply put it under an umbrella term, the infinite universe. As far as you can look, it is there. And we have no real comprehension of it, because our limited view is limited to work, job, getting up in the morning, going to bed at night, feeding the body, making friends, all these things. But where is it in the context of just the solar system? It's nowhere. It's not very significant. In the context of our own nature, that's where the significance lies. The significance lies in the infinite invisible that is our own true nature. The closer we get to that, the more we are able to play the game of life. And the more we are able to play the game of life, the more stable we will feel. And the more happy we will feel, the freer we will feel, until ultimately we'll get it. We won the game. That's the idea. All right, so now it's approaching 11:45. And with no questions, that was my thoughts. So there may be now some questions.
The question was, what stance do we take, or how do we play the game if we're witnessing like an injustice, a bullying? I was in a project and this last week and saw very intense bullying. In fact, the person got fired for doing nothing. And, it's hard to see God in that person in that moment. And also then sometimes to know what to do. I just wondered.
So revalue the question in the light of it's a game. Now, supposing you play a game in Wimbledon of tennis, Or you can play any game, of course. We can put it in the cricket terms, say. What use is a bowler if they're not aggressive? What use is a tennis player if they don't give you the hardest ball possible? So if we are playing the game of life, if we are viewing it in this way, then our whole position will change. Our whole evaluation will change. We won't take the individuality component of it seriously, isn't it? We'll say, okay, here's a hard ball coming. And the art of life and the art of living is to learn to play the game very well. So okay, we can imagine playing a game of tennis. We can see that it is a game of, let us say, singles. Lord, you're on that side, me on this side. Please play me your hardest ball. I won't shy away from it. Knowing that there's only one thing there. I'll play the game very well. I'll assume the separateness, but I'll understand the principle inside me. Play the game like that. If I learn to shift my position and understand that. Now, in any reaction, there is a number of different steps. Because we're not habitually used to necessarily that point of view, we have to get used to that point of view. Then we take our reaction. And then we don't leave it there. The reaction, for example, might be shock, followed by resentment, followed by a necessity to correct the situation, evaluate it in a justice way. But supposing I take it as a game, I will still have to make a judgment. I will still have to know how hard to hit the ball and in what direction I'll have to hit it. Now, supposing I have managed to master that completely, at least at the end of the day, I can review the whole situation and replace it with this understanding of it is a game that I have to play. And then the next day, I decide I'll play the game in a different way. And who's the player? It is only God. So there's no struggle to see God in it. So the conviction of this unity of existence has to be there. That's the role of scripture teacher and my own contemplation of this truth and meditation where I experience it in a directly cognizant way. That then acts as a stable platform for my performance.
Yeah, and actually I'm remembering an answer you gave previously. It's sort of coming back to me about that nothing needs to be corrected, actually. So that scene that I witnessed is all part of, a plan that's already synchronized. So me thinking it needs to be corrected actually is like, yeah, it's all as it's, I guess, meant to be, part of the game.
Yes.
For those individuals.
Yes, that doesn't mean to say we lapse into fatalism, because otherwise, if we're playing the tennis game, we'll just put our arms over our head and every ball that comes, we'll hide from it. Nowadays at Wimbledon, they don't just serve the ball, they serve it at, and the IBM has a kind of measuring device. You can see how fast this ball is going at huge bullet-like speeds. So imagine now people pay a lot of money, not only for their strawberries and ice creams in normal times in Wimbledon, but they go and they watch a tennis match, the top players in the world, and you might get to see center court. Imagine now one person suddenly changes his technique and he comes across the number one first-class player in the world, and every ball that is lobbed at him, he hides behind the umpire. What kind of game is that? See? So we have to learn to face the ball squarely and with as great a skill as we can, return the ball with great skill. What is karma? What is yoga? Yoga is skill in action and equilibrium of mind. It's put it the other way around in the Bhagavad Gita. So there's definition. we don't have to worry about things. It should not disturb our mind. Why? Because we're doing things efficiently. We're playing the game very well. If we understand that life is a game, we play it very well. We can poise ourselves nicely. And when something pops up like that, we can then say, okay, let us reevaluate a so-called normal position where somebody is aggressive and opposed to us. In the Wimbledon match, we can easily say, this person is not a top-class player, they're my enemy. And look at what they're doing to me, and I'm the victim. No, you're the player. Play the game very well. This is a game of waves, dealing with all the waves of life, conventionally called tanmatras. We manipulate them by going to the source and manifesting the waves that we want. Looking at the past won't help us. Anticipating and worrying about the future will not help us. But exercising our capacity to play now, that will be everything, and will be determining the future for us as well. Scripture tells us over and over again that it is God himself that is there on the other side of the proverbial net, on your side and in between. The net, the court, the whole thing. That's the practical use of Advaita philosophy. So instead of meditating and trying to steer something in a different direction, I should, in this way, assert myself. You are the ruler, the creator, the skillful executor, the artist, the performer. You are all in, all here. And not only that, but you are the self of everybody. Even if somebody insults me, I should see the capacity for somebody to speak as a wonderful thing. Without that law of the universe, no food digestion takes place, no vision takes place, no evaluation takes place, no sight takes place, no breathing takes place, no opportunity takes place, no cell grows, nothing is sustained. None of these happen. Can we not see this one player in all the players? And if you take it as a kind of drama, then it is surely the duty of the so-called opposition player to give me the hardest curveball I can manage. Somebody with this adventurous idea will then change their prayer. Instead of, Lord, save me, save me, save me, or Lord, please do something about this situation, I'll say, Lord, today give me a nice curveball. Give me the toughest thing. And if I can't manage it, I'll rehearse it till I can manage it. Hit the ball nicely into this corner, please. If I miss it, then do it again. If I hit it awkwardly, do it again. If I hit it on the side of the racket, do it again. Until I've mastered it. Once I've mastered it, do it in the other corner, please. So it requires a shift in our attitude. That's what it is. And this non-dualistic philosophy, of course, and the truth about it is not in theory only, but it's really in educating us to shift our standpoint and be poised in all circumstances. And then respond in a measured way, not in an impulsive way or habitually impulsive way. That's the art of playing the game.
Thank you, Swami.
All right, we can leave it there then for today. You can all go off to the beach. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.